The Rundown with Carrie Saldo podcast is funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
This is The Rundown, your weekly news and review from Western Mass. Good morning. It is Friday, January 30th, 2026. Our Rundowners this week on the phone, we have Hallie Claflin, Gateway Cities reporter for Commonwealth Beacon, as well as Dave Eisenstatter, state editor for Mass Live. They'll be joining us intermittently this morning. And in the studio, political consultant Ryan McCullum and special guest contributor to the Rundown this morning, co-host of the Fabulous 413 here on NEPM, Monty Belmonte. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
If you at home have thoughts, email the Rundown at nepm.org. That's the Rundown at nepm.org. Coming up a bit later in the show, potential changes via the Trump administration for how homelessness is addressed and what some in Western Mass are saying. We will discuss the details. Plus, we'll look at the rising cost of utility bills in the state and what that could mean for folks here in the 413. First, though, some broader context for this week's news. The State House News Service is reporting that Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey on Thursday issued an executive order to ban new immigration enforcement agreements, quote, unless there is a public safety need. This follows separate deadly immigration enforcement incidents in Minnesota this month. Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both U.S. citizens, were shot and killed by ICE agents. Protests have been ongoing across the country and here in the 413, including a vigil that was held last night in Preddy's honor. In other news this week, there was a massive winter storm. Kind of served as a reminder that Norman Rockwell was not crazy. We do, in fact, get snow in New England.
But none of those Norman Rockwell paintings have somebody like with an aching back trying to shovel out. It always makes it look so glorious in those paintings.
Oh, it looks so much more fun in the paintings, doesn't it? I mean, just brutal. How much of the white stuff did we get? Mass Live took a look at this. Dave Eisenstatter, are you there on the phone with us?
Yep, I'm here.
So when Mass Live took a look at these snow totals, what did you find out?
Yeah, so Mass Live kind of goes nuts with snow coverage. I love it. But and it's our snow coverage led by our breaking news editor, Heather Morrison. She's great. But my favorite thing that we do always with these storms is the snowfall totals. Like, leading up to the storm, it's always like, oh, what are we going to get? But now we have hard data. And for this one, snow fell literally everywhere across the state. Everybody knows, like, Berkshire County usually gets buried whenever there's a storm here. Pittsfield got 13 inches. Franklin County, too, 17 inches in Ashfield, 15 inches Turner's Falls. But 18 inches in Springfield, 21 and a half inches in Westfield. Amherst got 17, Northampton, East Hampton got 16 inches. So all of Western Mass got completely buried by this storm, over a foot pretty much everywhere.
And when you get 18 inches in Springfield, you might as well have 10 feet. Because where are you putting it? It's just...
There's a guy in a truck outside the studios right now that I thought was in a snowbank, but no, he was just trying to gently, in his tiny little pickup truck, push a little snowbank out of the way.
I was in Boston yesterday, and it's even worse. They have nowhere to put the snow.
Yeah. So Jeanette DeForge of the Springfield Republican set out to clarify a question. When does the clock start ticking on winter snowstorm cleanup? The answer, 24 hours. But... does it restart? This is a crucial question. Does it restart if the city dumps 6 inches of crud back into your driveway or the sidewalk when the plow comes pushing through all of it? And the answer is no, it does not restart.
Whoa. So you have to clear that out even if the city is against you.
Correct. And you could be ticketed. And Jeanette, really, I love that story in the Springfield Republican. She really digs into those questions for a number of cities around Springfield. The broader takeaway is that you could be fined if you sit the entire storm out on your couch eating popcorn instead of helping out local crews. But they're largely also going to work with you. So if you're an elderly resident who can't get out there and shovel or snowblow, remove those snow piles, they're not going to come down hard on you unless you're a repeat offender.
What if the NFC Championship game is on late and you didn't feel like shuttling between the AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game?
That she did not address that, Monty.
The other thing was, like, when do you start removing it? When you know it's going to dump, So I had to snow blow and then at night and then get up the next day and do it again.
People have philosophies about should you do it in the middle and get, a jump on it and then do it again at the end, or should you wait till it's all
My
there?
father-in-law and I have disagreeing philosophies. He thinks you wait it out until the end.
Really?
He lives in West Side, and he snowblowed from 8 a.m. until 2 in the afternoon as a result. I think you go as you're a little bit here and there throughout the entire storm.
I'm a big fan of procrastination.
Dave, did you have more to say on the snow? I heard you jump in a moment ago.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I just just for context, this snow fell everywhere, and it was like just across the country, down in Texas, Arkansas, and like the highest total. I thought this was interesting. The highest total anywhere was in Bonito Lake, New Mexico, with 31 inches. So I wonder what their sidewalks looked like.
Wow.
Brutal. Well, next steps, continued cold to frigid throughout this weekend. Is more snow on the way? There's a coastal storm we're watching. Maybe. It doesn't look like we're going to get walloped again, according to the news reports. The weather reports I looked at just before air, we could get some flurries, some areas up to an inch or two, which still is going to be a lot on top of a lot that we already have. For residents out there who do not have access to shelter, warming centers are open throughout Western Massachusetts. You have libraries during the day. Some shelters are even opening on the earlier side to try and bridge that gap between when, say, the library or other public institutions close and the shelters are open overnight. So please avail yourself of those spaces if you need them. All right, let's move on because, with all this snow and cold, people need to be warm, which means, I don't know about you, but I am not looking forward to my utility bills in the coming weeks here. And Dave, this leads us to reporting by Liesl Nygaard in Mass Live, which I believe you edited. The headline, Mass Utility Bills, 3 big reasons behind rising costs this year. And I'm quoting from her reporting. U.S. home heating costs are projected to rise 9.2% this winter, which is more than 3 times the rate of inflation driven by higher utility costs and colder than average weather, according to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. The impact is particularly significant for Massachusetts, which faces some of the highest energy costs in the country, ranking 3rd by PowerOutage.com at $146 per month, which equates to 26.23 cents per kilowatt hour if you're doing the math there. Dave, what's your biggest takeaway from Liesl's reporting?
Yeah, so those 3 factors, it's interesting. So the 3 factors, energy supply, which gets further constrained in winter months, public benefits, like programs like Mass Save, so they're free when you use them to winterize your home, but everybody across the state pays for them, and that can be as much as like a quarter to a third of your utility bill. Those programs, maintenance and infrastructure. So the cost of replacing a utility pole has increased by 60%, transformers 100%, and wire by 50% because of the cost of inflation. So those 3 areas, this is what Eversource explained to Liesl, really are behind a lot of the increases. One of the cool things is that Governor Healy has been working to get a deal with the utility companies to reduce energy bills by 10 to 25%. Originally, that was just going to go back into your bill in the summer months. My understanding now is that it actually will be a reduction, that they're not going to jack up the prices in the summer months to make up for it. So that's a little bit of a benefit.
Yeah, I saw that reporting too. I think it came out yesterday or the day before. And basically, the state is going to cover on electric bills. You'll see February, March, a slight reduction in your bills, 25% in total, so not slight. But you are going to have to pay back 10% of that come the warmer months. And then for gas users, it's a different percentage, a different breakdown. I think it's something like 10%, and unclear as to whether or not all of that will be back on. But the thing was there that you're going to see almost a 7%, 6.7% interest rate on the money that you were going to get deferred temporarily. The governor's trying to give people a little bit of a break here, but this is a much deeper problem.
Yeah, it's a deeper problem. And a year ago, our president said he was going to cut energy costs in half, including electricity. And clearly, he has not done that. And so there's only so much sometimes that elected officials can do. And so, getting to the root causes is really what people have to dig in and do. Subsidizing it through tax dollars so that we don't have to pay as much still means Eversource is still getting the money. And so where can we make these things go down?
Also, we had Community Action of Pioneer Valley and the North Quabbin on the show last week. They have an event going on right now called Eat Up for Heat Up, where you can actually go to certain restaurants and support the programs that they offer to help people that need fuel assistance. But when you hear LIHEAP, the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, is under threat, it sends, and if you'll pardon the pun, a chilling effect to people who rely on that money, not knowing whether it's coming or not, and then getting the message out whether that subsidy will be there for them or not. So even when the money is threatened to not come but still comes, it creates massive problems for people who don't know how, where they're making the terrible decision to heat or eat, as they say. Will we put food on the table or we pay the energy bills this month?
And even LIHEAP, it's still a subsidy, right?
Right.
And so where are the cost controls, like on the front end, so that we're not just continuing to use tax dollars to give to the energy companies?
It really has me thinking about perhaps what is an oversimplified solution, but we do have a handful of municipal utilities here in Western Massachusetts: Chicopee, Holyoke, South Hadley, Westfield. And WWLP recently reported that Westfield Gas and Electric the rates there remain 23% lower for gas, and electric rates are nearly half of what
It's amazing.
folks are paying to Eversource, or the larger utility, National Grid, Eversource. And one of the things that was pointed out in the Mass Live story, Dave, was the fact that it's not the actual cost of the electricity that people get thumped with. It is the where utilities can make their money back or make profit is on the distribution lines and repairing, and that is something that the Department of Public Utilities weighs in on. So there's this friction between the companies coming before the DPU and saying, here's what we need, here's the profits we need to make, and then whether the DPU supports those changes. Where do you think this goes from here, Dave Eisenstatter?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but it's important to find out. We had a report at the end of December that was the coldest December in 25 years. We're going to be checking in again. It was the second coldest, or the coldest December. We're going to be checking in at the end of this month. It would not surprise me at all if this was going to be the coldest January in recent history.
It was interesting to hear the Eversource spokesman, William Hinkle, tell Mass Live, quote, "The cheapest unit of energy is the one you don't use. Regardless of rate changes, using less energy is the most effective way to bring down your total bill." I mean, stating the obvious there, but it is kind of the brutal truth of what we're facing, especially during these incredibly cold months, and where Monty points out people are making really tough choices between paying bills and eating.
Only the adults can touch the thermostat.
The kids keep trying to put it on 6-7. I don't know what that's all about.
67 is actually not a bad
temperature, no.
But yeah, turn off that light too,
Absolutely, absolutely. It is the forever push-pull in my house.
Yeah.
Logan, turn off the lights.
What, do you live in a barn? Shut that door.
Just
All
use a
right.
blanket.
More sweaters and blankets for everyone. Still ahead on the rundown, how a program for chronically homeless residents could be changing and what that impact could be, and what help is on the way for the many decrepit bridges here in Western Mass. We'll find out. If you're listening to The Rundown, you can chime in at therundown@nepm.org. You are listening to The Rundown on 88.5 NEPM. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Rundown here on 88.5 NEPM. I'm Carrie Saldo, joined on the phone by journalist Hallie Claflin and Dave Eisenstatter, and in the studio by political consultant Ryan McCullum and NEPM's own Monty Belmonte. Welcome back, everybody.
I feel like Alan Chartock. I'm on all the shows now.
We're going to bring in Hallie Claflin from Commonwealth Beacon. The headline on one of your recent stories, Hallie: Trump administration targets program for chronically homeless residents, sparking fear for vulnerable populations in cities like Springfield. And at the heart of your reporting, Hallie, is this debate over two different approaches to working with the unhoused population. Tell us about the difference between what's known as Housing First, which had been the model of choice for a good long while, versus this idea of temporary housing assistance, which the Trump administration is now pushing for.
Yeah, great question. So it's all part of the Trump administration's long-standing rejection of the Housing First approach. This has been heavily researched and for years was widely adopted by both political parties. It's this idea that people experiencing chronic homelessness need the security of a permanent shelter, a permanent place to sleep at night before they can focus on any other problems that may be causing their homelessness, whether that's substance abuse, whether that's mental health or trauma, job insecurity. If people don't have somewhere to lay their head every night, none of those other things can be their focus. So this is where the country shifted to providing permanent supportive housing services and programs to the chronically homeless. And it's just as it sounds. It is a permanent apartment with no designated length of stay, with on-site supportive services like case management. And research shows that this is a highly effective way to actually keep people in housing, keep them housed for longer, to prevent chronic homelessness, and it keeps people with physical and mental disabilities off the streets. And so the Trump administration and even Project 2025 views this as sort of a government handout that gives people a home without requiring them to seek treatment. So they would instead opt for transitional housing, which is temporary, it has a designated length of stay, and it is usually contingent on a person going to treatment or seeking or securing work, maybe service requirements. And experts have told me that those programs typically just see a lot of dropout rates, and so they aren't quite effective at keeping people housed. But for providers in Springfield and all over who are dependent on this federal money, if the federal administrators of the program are directed by the administration to start targeting only transitional housing programs for grants and money, then providers in Springfield and beyond will have no choice but to sort of switch the programs that they're offering so that they can get that money.
And right now, as you reported, the program is in a holding pattern because the Trump administration wanted to move ahead and do this. There was a court order that said, no, you're going to pause. So it's held up in the courts right now. And you, when you spoke with Geraldine McCafferty out of Springfield, she said that the city has 305 of these Housing First units available, 305. And you also had a statistic that talked about for people who are not in permanent housing in a stable living situation, they're often in and out of the ER more often, or other types of medical treatment to the tune of almost $10,000 per person. So you're talking about $3 million for these 300 people who are already in these stable housing environments. Ryan McCollum, what do you make of this potential shift that the Trump administration is moving for?
Well, I think Geraldine says right off the bat in Haley's article, it's intentional chaos. Trying to recreate our system in Project 2025 is the guidebook. So, as reported as well, it was a bipartisan moving forward to Housing First. Both sides, Republican and Democrats, agreed until Project 2025 and this MAGA movement. There is an ideology that temporary housing to get people back on their feet is better than having them be complacent. But all the research shows that that's wrong, and then it's also more costly, as you just said.
But Scott Turner, go ahead, Monty. Did you?
I was just going to say that the order of operations and the system of checks and balances seems to be what's not working here, where it's a unilateral decision coming from the Project 2025 from the White House to say let's pause this money. Then the courts have to intercede, as opposed to saying let's have a debate in Congress about whether Housing First is the method by which we should go forward, and do it through the more normal means, and then propose a bill, debate that bill, vote on that bill, and see what happens from there. That doesn't seem to be the way that this is happening right now. And the idea behind permanent housing, if you want to help someone out, you want them to get a job so that they can support themselves and have their own housing. If they don't have a permanent address, it's really hard to apply for jobs. So to have some sort of sense of security so that you have a grounding, so that you can move to the next step and then the next step and the next step, I think is an important piece of that.
Yeah, the administration has made no bones about its position here. Scott Turner, who leads housing and urban development right now at the federal level, said, quote, "The housing first ideology encourages dependence on endless government handouts while neglecting to address the root causes of homelessness, including illicit drugs and mental illness." And Hallie, you spoke to this, saying that sometimes the programs require other types of substance use treatment and things like that. It's not to say that people aren't using and availing themselves of those programs, even if they are in the standard, the permanent housing. It's just that it's not required anymore, right?
Right, and the idea that if it is required, it might deter people from entering that type of housing program to begin with, I think is the concern there.
Because it's a commitment that if they break it, they then lose their housing as a result.
Exactly.
Well, this debate is clearly going to continue. The next steps, as I understand it from your reporting, Hallie, is that we're waiting to hear whether the Trump administration's proposed changes are allowed by the courts. Do we know when there might be resolution there?
Yeah, so all of this has delayed the normal funding and grant application cycle for continuum of care providers across the state who rely on this funding, but we are still awaiting a final ruling from the federal judge. It's expected in the next few months, so we'll definitely be waiting on that. And even if that ruling states that the administration cannot implement this overhaul, there's a chance they'll come at it again with a different approach. But they have made it clear that they intend to change this, and they intend to do away with Housing First programs, which has obviously caused a lot of anxiety at the local level here in Western Mass.
All right. Well, we appreciate your reporting. On to some reporting from Berkshire County. The Berkshire Eagles Talia Lucier headline: Governor Maura Healey announces repairs for 27 bridges in Western Massachusetts under Revive program. Quoting, Governor Maura Healey announced during her State of the Commonwealth address last week that 27 bridges in Western Mass will be repaired under the state's Accelerated Bridge Program, following advocacy by State Representative Lee Davis, who filed legislation to revive this program. And we touched on State of the Commonwealth last week here on the show, and I completely missed the bridge thing because I read Healey's prepared remarks. She didn't include this in those prepared remarks. This bridge thing was an off-the-cuff kind of surprise to folks there on the ground, even to State Representative Lee Davis, who I guess started whooping and hollering because she then learned that she had advocated successfully for this. Ryan, we are in an election season. Governor Healey is running for re-election, has 3 Republican challengers. Do I have too much cynical sauce on my eggs this morning to think that, she's trying to curry favor with voters by saying, hey, these decrepit bridges, we're going to fix them up? Or is this sort of Healey listening to state rep and other people's pleas that these need to be fixed? I think
it's both. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I mean, it's good to do it in an election year. The bridge money and it's bond money on the Hill. We kind of called it funny money because you could do some good things with bond money, but it's not really hitting the budget the same way. And obviously, we need safe bridges, especially out here in Western Mass as we drive more and we use our roads more. And so it's good, and it's a good win for Representative Davis, who's a newer state rep, to have that pushed up and I think the governor also wants to show that she's not ignoring Western Mass.
There was a 2022 report that says there are 275 structurally deficient bridges in Western Mass alone. So yes, 27 being repaired, fantastic, but certainly we have far more in the pipeline, 644 statewide. Monty Belmonte, have you ever driven over a bridge in Western Massachusetts?
Never. I'm terrified.
So this means nothing to
I
you.
believe there are trolls that live under there. No, but I live in Turner's Falls, which has a massive bridge that spans the Connecticut River and takes us to Gill, Massachusetts. And so from a political standpoint, it's great because you want the bridges to be safe. Yeah. But that shut down the village of Turner's Falls for a year, to the point where people were literally putting up signs, Turner's Falls, easy to love, hard to leave. So people love infrastructure to be up to date. Absolutely. They do not love going through the process of having to wait and drive around and be in traffic when that happens. So it'll be interesting if that has some sort of political implications, that people curse Governor Healey's name if it takes them 15 minutes longer to go on their commute to work.
But I think ignorantly sometimes they curse like the mayor's name or the town council. Right. It's like, that is a state road.
And we don't really know what these 27 bridges are exactly yet, right? It seems like a little bit of an arbitrary number.
It's an arbitrary number, and there are a lot of questions still. Hallie, is that what's sort of the sticking point for you right now? Are the questions the things that we don't have answers to, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, exactly. We don't really know what those bridges are, and it does kind of strike me that this was an off-the-cuff kind of, it's something that wasn't in her prepared remarks, and so we'll definitely need more details on this, but I think ultimately, yeah, we know rural areas struggle with aged infrastructure. This has the potential to create jobs, and these are the kinds of local things people really care about, and Western Mass and rural Mass often feels kind of left behind in terms of infrastructure investments like this. So it may have its benefits, but we definitely need more details.
I'll give the governor credit for calling it ABC, Accelerated Bridge Construction. Off the cuff, that is a good way to remember what she's up to.
I think the program may have been named that prior, but if she came with that off the cuff.
Just keep any covered bridges. I love those things.
Covered bridges, essential.
But I think it is also interesting because last week when I was talking about whether Western Mass got any love in the State of the Commonwealth address, there really was just a quick mention of Holyoke. Mm-hmm. But then this bridge piece, which again I missed, maybe she looked at her remarks at the last minute and said, oh, wait a minute, we need to have a more statewide focus. I'm completely speculating there. It could
or
be
staff.
Luckily, nothing dramatic happened in her Western Mass office over the course of 2025.
Oh, man.
Nothing.
No comment.
Nothing at all to be discussed there. All right, so we still have lots of questions here on which of these 27 bridges, which specifically they are. Also, this is a statewide program, so it's not going to be just Western Massachusetts that'll see the benefits of this. So lots of questions still to be answered. We'll continue discussing it here on the Rundown. All right, it's time for our scoops, praise, and prediction portion of the show, where we ask journalists here to open up their notebooks and maybe give us a little information on a scoop they're working on, heap some praise on a newsworthy nugget that you've seen, or maybe make a prediction about the news. Hallie Claflin, let me start with you. What's on your mind? Scoop, praise, prediction?
Yes. I definitely have a scoop, a story I'm working on right now, again related to homelessness in Western Mass. So on Wednesday night, I spent a few hours with local volunteers in Holyoke, and I observed as they conducted the point-in-time count, which is the annual national homeless count conducted locally all across the country, where volunteers literally go out into the streets and talk to people to tally up homelessness. And so homelessness has been rising in Holyoke and Western Mass. So it was really important to these volunteers, many of whom are local service providers, to accurately capture this number so they can advocate for resources. I think Holyoke saw one of the highest counts it's had in years last year. So it will be interesting to see if that number is even higher this year, maybe it's lower, and what can be done about it.
We can look for that in Commonwealth Beacon. Dave Eisenstatter from Mass Live, do you have a scoop, praise, or prediction for us this week? I think that Kara will work to bring Dave into the fold. We'll come back here into the studio. Ryan McCollum, what's on your mind?
A dreary prediction and then a good one. ICE will come to Massachusetts. They're in Maine. I think they're getting out of Maine because Senator Collins is in a fight, and so she doesn't want ICE up there messing around and hurting her election chances. My parents live in Maine. They've seen ICE all the way up to where they are in Machias, which is 8 hours up from here. My mother just sent something about them going on to Native American reservations, which would show that ICE officers aren't really all that bright, thinking that just because you're brown, you're not from here, even though they've been here before us. And we saw yesterday that Governor Healy has some executive actions when it comes to ICE, and the Black and Latino Caucus has a bill when it comes to ICE. So they might bring that presence here. The good prediction is the Patriots will win by a touchdown.
Wow, yes! Let's hope
All right,
that comes true.
Dave Eisenstatter, I'll come back to you. Do you have a scoop, praise, or a prediction for us this week?
Yeah, well, sorry. So there's this really cool event happening this weekend. Henry Knox, sort of a lesser-known American revolutionary figure, went across the state through Springfield, dragged cannons all the way through to chase out a hostile government force, the British, out of Boston. Old Sturbridge Village is having like a day-long, weekend-long celebration of this.
Celebrating Henry Knox in the 413 this weekend. Monty Belmonte, briefly, what's on your mind?
A positive story about ICE. The ICE Art Festival happening in Northampton this weekend, and a celebration of the delightful human being Dave Rothstein, who died too young back in November. He's the guy who paddled a pumpkin down the Connecticut River. There's a huge celebration of him and his life happening this weekend. That's the only ICE story that
thanks to everybody who joined the Rundown today. Ryan McCollum, Monty Belmonte, Hallie Claflin, and Dave Eisenstatter. I'm Carrie Saldo. Have a great Friday, everybody.